And the new, the exciting, the like, I feel good, I'm really on, I'm successful right now. Like those seasons are so beautiful and so helpful, but that might not be the way that it is all the time. And I think that
so true.
That is the important thing people need to think about is like, all right, if that's not happening and I'm not always on and always good and always growing, what do I connect to? What keeps me here? What am I doing this for? And I think that's the conversation people need to be having. Hello, my name is Amanda Bucci. I am a business and life coach, and I have a new book coming out in 2023 called Followed, The Content Creator's Guide to Being Seen, Facing Judgment, and Building a Thriving Digital Brand. And today on Everforward Radio, we talk all about why being a content creator and running a business is so deeply personal and what that means to be a human being in your business, in your brand, and going along your journey and all of the important ways that you can navigate that.
I'm so glad to have you here. Quite literally, like in 2 or 3 months, it will be our, I don't math good, sixth year
anniversary.
6-year podversary.
Yay.
Here we are again.
So cool.
I finally figured out how to work the equipment since then.
Yeah, you've come a long way since being with our little setup and the headphones, and we just did it back to back. First podcast episodes together. Exactly.
So cool. Much of a learning curve back then. And here I am now. Here you are now.
Yeah.
And like, you're one of my favorite people in the world. And like I've told you, thank you. I believe I've told you this, but if not, I'll say it again. I've loved watching you transform, or rather I should say like your journey of being you and continuously finding you and getting closer and closer to you and coming closer to home. And then that version is the version that, you create from and your business and social media and everything else that maybe I don't even know about. But it's just so cool to have you back here and just to be here now 6-7 years later, a part of this journey with you.
Yeah. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. It's been cool to just be able to stay connected and like observe each other from afar and then we come together. And it's just, I think it's cool to have even social media as like a movie of everyone's lives. And like the people, I think it's going to be so cool in like 40 years. And we're like, remember 50 years ago when I did that thing? Some of you guys have been here for 50 years. I think that's going to be wild.
I haven't thought about that.
Oh my God. I think about it regularly.
Do I want to look at my reels in 50 years? I don't know.
Like, look at me from forever ago, showing our kids, like scrolling all the way back.
I wonder if podcasting will even be a thing. Who knows?
Who knows? We don't know. Maybe in the metaverse, you'll be some other version of yourself podcasting. I
can't go there yet.
I can't even. I don't even want to.
Yeah, we'll save that for another 6 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but in your journey, you have helped so many other people understand their journey and propel their journey. And I understand that's a big part of your focus and your work here and now, which I think is so crucial because I'll say real quickly about myself, when I look back into my businesses, and just anything that I've done professionally, when I've been stuck, it's because I was stuck. Yeah. When I flourished, it's because I was flourishing. When I was manifesting, creating, when I was uncertain, that was all reflections of me. And the less I tried to keep me away from professional version, like the easier things got.
Yeah.
The work didn't change. The work was still there, but just like the process and the end result, and just like it became the best it could be. But not everybody realizes that, do they? Yeah,
no. I think the way that we've even just trained ourselves and we've been trained to be in society as people, we keep our work separate and business isn't personal and these kinds of conversations where we believe emotion is bad and shouldn't be involved. And it's wild because we work with people, clients, collaborations, team members, and people are full human beings with full experiences of life. And the way that they're experiencing their lives has everything to do with how they show up online and what they're saying and what they're doing, especially if it's coming from a heart-centered place. And I think at this point, especially for content creators, it's such a hard job. It requires a lot of thought and intention and strategy. And especially if you're a personal brand and you have a podcast or a YouTube channel or you're making Instagram content, or you're just like, you're in it every single day. And the question you show up every single day with is, what do I have to say today? you have to be on it with yourself on a regular basis to share your thoughts, to share your perspective, and to hold space for people and to hold space for like a brand that's bigger than you. Like the thing that we're asking entrepreneurs to do, content creators to do, is to say, hey, create something that's bigger than you. It should come from you. And you have to like connect to yourself and know yourself well enough to say things regularly.
Yeah.
And you got to do it every single day. So what do you have to say? And how do you manage that? And I think it's like so ridiculous and naive to believe that we should separate ourselves from that process.
So I guess my question from there is, when did you realize this? Was this something that you struggled with and you kind of just like had an epiphany, a realization, or did you always try to navigate personal Amanda, professional Amanda, personal Amanda, professional Amanda?
I think for the very early stages of my business and content creator journey, it wasn't even really a question. It was 2014, 15. Everything was still really new. And
back in the day,
it was just at that point, I didn't plan on becoming an influencer. I think at this point in time, younger people or people that are just getting started are so aware of all the work that goes into it and all of the things people talk about around building a business and being a content creator. And back then it was more, I just have stuff to say and I'm going to say it. And, I don't have enough room on Instagram. I'll start a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I've always had an easy time being authentic in a kind of way. And I have since done a lot of inner work on myself and have this understanding of myself that definitely comes from my upbringing. A lot of people, everyone has their own upbringing and their own relationship to life. And even if you didn't have anything particularly eventfully traumatic, like I didn't growing up, I grew up with plenty of privilege in a great family.
Capital T trauma that you're aware of.
No capital T trauma that I was aware of, but we all have our own experience of life, right? So mine was I grew up in a very like solid family life, but not a lot of contrast, not a lot of like negative, challenging things in the way. But my family was very like kind, loving, generous people, but very agreeable. And I didn't see a lot of conflict growing up. So what I realized about myself very recently was that I have a fairly easy time not having a super strong identity. I can be pretty like malleable with other people. And I've since learned about my astrology and my human design and just kind of my life path is like being identity-less is actually kind of easy for me in a way, or it was for a very long time.
I think you just completely hit the nail on the head and you explained so much of my life.
Oh my God, can't wait to keep going.
Wow, yeah.
Great, let's do it. And I think a lot of people who have people-pleasing tendencies don't really recognize that. In therapy recently, my first, last year I went to a somatic therapist.
Oh, cool.
And he's been my mentor and he's been amazing. And the first thing he said to me in our first session was, "Why are you mirroring me?" And I was like, what do you mean? And I was essentially so unconsciously just doing the mannerisms and the tone of voice that he was doing. And I was processing some of my own personal stuff. So I recognized that in my deepest patterns and when I am my most triggered or my most activated or in my like worst self, I just disconnect from myself and dissociate.
And just chameleon to
everybody else. And I'm like, I don't need to be Amanda. Who is that even? Who cares? I'll just do whatever everybody else is doing. And I've also found that that's a part of my greatest gift, being able to be so present with another person. And this is what people pleasers, their kind of whole story, and this is for myself as well, it takes one to know one, is like, I'm really good with other people. I help them feel really safe. I help them feel like they're really seen and witnessed and they're empaths, right? So it's like, people feel really safe around me and they can share things and people just share things with me.
Yeah.
And that's a whole thing. And we'll talk about my archetypes too. That's like the coach archetype is like the relationship person, but the shadow of it is not having really strong boundaries or a strong sense of self. So although the kind of darkness and shadowiness of that pattern, that energy was I don't have a strong connection to myself. So I'm kind of maybe easily manipulated or more so agreeable to the point where in my early stages of business, I went along with what other people wanted me to do or what I thought.
Persuadable, would you say?
Yeah. And like I would look at other people and what they were doing and I would say, I should do that. or that's better than what I could do on my own, or I didn't have a strong direction of like, I need to do this, I need to do that. But on the, the light side of that, or the positive side of that, there's the level of like service you can provide, and the level of connection, and the level of safety you can create in your relationships. But the thing that I had to do for myself was really learn, how do I bring in that assertiveness? How do I bring in that clear sense of self, so I know exactly who I am, and I know what is a yes for me, what is a no for me, where my boundaries and my edges are as a human being. And I can totally be malleable and flexible, and my like ease, even in my growth journey. I've made this joke. I'm like, I can have an ego death like every other month, because, it's helpful to be able to release yourself from the grips of identity so you can grow, right? The thing that keeps us stuck is our grip to, I'm a introverted person or whatever, or like, I'm a person that only does this and doesn't do that. And that can keep you stuck if it's really challenging for you to release yourself from that. So all to say, in my experience of myself, I've done a lot of this publicly, and that has shown up as a brand, a lot of changes and adjustments. And I've shared a lot of that. And I've always found it really important to share with my audience, like, this is what I'm going through and why you're seeing something different and what's actually happening here. And I've always just found that it's important for me to do that, even if it's a little bit of a slower process. Like, there's been plenty of things that have been more introspective for me, more internal, and a lot of content creators and business owners go through this. And again, not everybody does it super publicly. Not everybody shares everything. Everyone has their boundary lines with what level of vulnerability they're willing to share. But I think so many people go through things in their life that change them, and then they change their brand and they change their business. And it's like, how do I navigate that?
Yeah. It's like a personal event and/or a personal shift. And then all of a sudden, or within a short window of time, there's a professional shift.
Yes.
There's a rebrand, there's a new project, there's a new platform, or just you're doing the same thing, same platform, just in an entirely different way.
Yeah.
And that kind of leaves a lot of people, your audience, your clients, your everybody, like in the dark a little bit.
Yeah. What's going on? I'm
exactly.
So curious.
But you, if memory serves, like I'm just kind of like thinking back on like what Amanda's top hits posts like over the years. And I feel like so much of your biggest work has actually been your explanation of, hey, this is Amanda now.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is why you're going to see X, Y, Z kind of changes.
Yeah, it's very
Here's
true.
maybe kind of reflection on A, B, and C in the past. Did you feel like that was necessary for professional version of yourself? Or was it just kind of like, you know what, this is kind of like a therapeutic explanation. This is really for me, but I'm so much in the spotlight that like me personally is me professionally.
Yeah, I think it's definitely both. I think on a professional level for personal brands, I think it's important. Again, you don't have to share or explain everything, but I think that there's a level of taking people along for the ride. People love to get behind, and not even just love because it's like, give the people what they want, but knowing what your vision is and what your purpose really is, like that's what people get behind. They get behind a mission. They're like, can I get behind that thing also? Is what they're doing something that I am not just agreeing to, but like getting on board with. And I think it's helpful to talk about like why you're making adjustments or even doing anything. Like any brand, any business or company needs to explain or at least represent visually, auditory, anything like that. Like, this is what we stand for.
Yeah.
This is why we think what we're doing matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So any personal brand, it's the same thing on a professional level. It's like, this is why what I'm doing matters for myself, and also how it's going to translate to how it's going to actually help you. On a personal level, I think it's not only therapeutic, but it allows you to like, it's almost this additional step that allows you to really claim your change.
Oh yeah.
It's like, this is, I've done this within myself, and I have chosen to do this work and figure this answer out. And it's almost like posting on your feed is like the final frontier. It's like, all right,
it's official.
It is
We're
official.
IG official now.
Yeah. It's either like I've gone through some sort of transition in a personal, maybe like a breakup, or maybe I'm moving or whatever. I'm sure all your moves, you've explained why. And some like, oh, this is not for me. This is not exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of this. This is why I want this kind of space and I want this studio and this is helpful for my life. And all those little things, they're so human, you know?
Oh, good point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me personally, when I've had these experiences, these personal revelations, I am just like the quickest to do this. Yeah. I am just like, hey, here's what I went through. Yep. Here's the good, bad, and the ugly. And I just get so excited just to share with, my humans around me, but, my humans in here.
Yeah.
And
in here.
Like, mira.
These people, we love you guys.
We do. I do. And like literally, you've been such a huge part of this journey for me and, for Amanda, anybody that is wild enough to want to put your life out on the internet consistently. But I don't think it's ever hurt me or hindered me, or I don't ever regret it. But I will say that I do think maybe if I had just waited like a day and really wrap my head around, okay, besides the excitement of the change or the revelation or whatever it was that personally impacted my life, what if I just sat on it for a day to really sit in it so that I can better interpret it for the person that needs to hear it, versus just like, okay, cool, Chase, like whatever you're going through, that's cool for you.
Right. Yeah,
Does
totally.
that make sense?
Yeah. And I write about that in my book too, of just how quickly do you share? How do you choose to figure out what you share? And I think that's something I've learned as well. I used to be very
I need to get in on that chapter.
I'll get it to you. I'll give you an early copy.
Amazing.
I used to be very quick with it as well. I used to just kind of like dive in, and that was a way that I connected to as well, of like, I am just sharing myself and this is a way that I feel connected.
Because what's more real and authentic than here and now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And then there's also the recognition of like, all right, not every single one of these people is like not only going to receive it the right way, but there's context matters.
Right. Yeah.
And the place that you share from matters. And I think it's like just a really nuanced conversation of, you're not necessarily only supposed to share when you feel good or when you fully process something. Like, it's totally okay to share something you haven't, it's not fully baked yet. You haven't fully figured it out yet. Being in process is great. We're all in process of so many different things.
Transformation's still in the oven.
Yes.
It's got another
it's bacon
2 to 4 months, but here it is. Yeah.
Still in that. Yeah. And you don't always have to turn everything into a teaching moment. You can be very like, this is what I'm going through. And like, that's it. Thanks for listening. I don't know if you've seen that TikTok. We might do a lot of TikTok memes. It was like the Hillary Duff audio. Thanks for spending some time with me. That's my life. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did.
It's like the play version of thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for, yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think that it's like what feels authentic to you, not just in the moment, but like, how do you blend that with how you want to show up with your brand and with your people? And I think that in thinking about your relationship to your audience as a real relationship, you're like, what is this role that I am hosting in these people's lives? Like, what are they not only coming here for? And it's not even like, what are they expecting, but just like, what's the dynamic between you and I as friends? And how do we show up for one another that creates a feeling of like reciprocity and connection? And it might be a little much if I just showed up to the first time we met after, a couple years of not seeing each other and just like trauma dumped on you or whatever. Like, you might need a little rapport building or just context setting. So
I get plenty of that with people in LA. So I'm pretty used to it now, but.
Exactly. But if you think about it, like, how would I show up in a relationship with a friend or with a client, or how do I want to show up? Everyone shows up so differently. I think that there's a difference between like an influencer and a coach. And then there's plenty of people like you and I that are multiple of those roles and archetypes. And I think it's just, there's so many different ways that you can show up now. And I also think that people are owning more elements of themselves now. And it's not just like, I'm only going to be the podcaster Chase. It's like, I'm going to be the husband Chase. And I think influencers did this a lot more than the coaching space. I always like to watch the differences of it. And the entrepreneurship space is more of like, this is me as the business owner, and this is the marketing content that I share to promote my business. And then influencers and content creators are more like, this is the whole everything of me. And sometimes I have a business, which
exactly.
I think is interesting to pay attention to.
You brought up a key word a few times that I think is so important. I would love to have you expand on it, please. And that's authentic.
Yeah.
How do we know what we are experiencing, what we're thinking, what we're feeling is a true, authentic thought, state, belief system?
What a question.
That we
It's a big one.
we actually want to share, or how do we know, like, maybe this is just something I'm going through and doesn't actually need to be something that I implement in my content or my business?
Yeah, I think it's a huge question that it's like my whole purpose of life is trying to answer it, really. I've come up with a couple of things for sure. And I think something helpful to think about is what gets in the way of me being authentic. First and foremost, like, what are the barriers to my own authenticity? And I think one of the very first ones is our trauma and conditioning. So conditioning is essentially, what culture were you kind of brought up in? Were you brought up in maybe a religious culture, or like a culture of people that, acted a certain way? Maybe they were ashamed of sexuality, or they had certain beliefs. And you as a child grew up to have that whole entire culture be your perspective.
About my life, or
perhaps
hypothetically speaking?
We talked about where you're from. So hypothetically speaking, a lot of people in the US, obviously, myself, I grew up Catholic.
A lot of us can relate to small town, religious / sheltered kind of things, where anything, about sexuality or anything against the grain is like, we don't do that.
Right. Whereas versus a lot of people that move to the cities like LA or New York or even Austin, people are figuring out, how do I be authentic? What is my authentic self? Because I'm trying to get away from my small town where I felt stifled, and all of these people behaved this particular way. And I feel like I need to behave different ways, but these people aren't okay with that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a huge barrier.
Struggling with the right and wrongness of it. Yeah.
The judgment.
And is it really right and wrong?
Right. And whatever your culture you grew up in says this is how it's supposed to be, and that's not how it's supposed to be. That's a huge part of what you're fighting against. And you bring a lot of that to your brand, to your content as a person. And it reflects on what you choose to share or don't share. Right. So if you haven't kind of unpacked what is my conditioning and what are the patterns that I learned to survive as a child from my upbringing, or, maybe I was bullied as a kid and I don't want to share certain things that I think would get me bullied. So I'm going to be really safe and predictable, and I'm not going to be like my spicy self, or I'm not going to say anything polarizing, or I'm just going to be kind of safe. And I can totally build a brand that's really safe. But then all of a sudden I'm kind of unpacking that bullying and I'm healing from it. I'm doing therapy or whatever. And now my whole audience thinks that I'm this safe person that doesn't say anything, that doesn't swear or whatever. And they have this perception of me. I call it the persona in my book. It's like, what's your at Chase Tuning? Like, what's your at Amanda Bucci or whatever? Like, what is that version of you?
What a great perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That your audience understands as who you are from what you choose to share. So those two things are huge when it comes to what are some barriers to my own authenticity. And I think it's important for everybody to go on their own personal development journey and figure out, like, all right, like, what are the ways I'm protecting myself from getting hurt? And what are the behavioral patterns that show up in this space that help keep me safe? And that's a whole, it's its own separate personal journey that you do over here with your friends, with your partner, with your therapist, with your support system. And it takes time to unpack that. But at the end of the day, your authenticity is not just the healed version of you or like the highest version of you. It's whatever version of you is in the moment. But I think something people they like misconstrue that with, being authentic means that, let's just say I'm having a bad day or whatever. So if I'm to be authentic online, I have to share about my bad day, or else I'm being inauthentic. That's not necessarily true. You can keep things to yourself without being inauthentic. You can have a life, you can be a person, you can have a shitty day, and you don't have to cry on Instagram to show people that you're authentic.
Think about it in like a real life scenario. If you're walking down the street or running errands, if every single person you interacted with said, "Hey, how's it going?"
And you're like,
would you just
I'm having a bad
dump
day.
everything on them?
No.
That's a good
not
little switch.
not everybody is, not that they're not worthy to receive your vulnerability, but it's not always entirely emotionally safe. And not everybody is at that level of intimacy with you,
Wow, yeah.
especially
Yeah,
your
true.
audience.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to consider, like, what level of intimacy do I feel comfortable sharing with the perspective of the whole world, or just all of these people that I don't know what they think of me, or I don't know if they're going to turn on me and put it on Reddit or whatever and just like take anything that I do and make it wrong, and who knows. So I think the more that you get okay with your own vulnerability, and I think that this is like an emotional personal development pathway that's so important for all humans, is to release the conditioning that we have in the patriarchy, which is to say your emotions are bad, your vulnerability is weak, especially with men. But in any kind of dynamic of like any part of you that is not perfectly presentable or not perfectly authoritative or like knows everything, there's so many things in our society that train people to think that they have to present this version of themselves.
So many ways we are trained and we don't even realize it.
We don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And social media can either amplify that or it can show you that you don't have to keep doing that.
Exactly. I love that little shift of, well, for me, is I never thought about it that way. When I'm trying to do the work, when I'm like, all right, I want Chase to evolve, I want Chase to maintain, I want Chase to grow, whatever, usually focusing on, all right, what are my sticking points? Like, where am I feeling stuck? Where am I feeling pain? Where am I feeling some kind of way? Yeah. But what you're saying is like, if I ask the question, if we ask the question, where am I safe? Where am I keeping myself safe?
Yeah.
That's like the obvious stuff that we wouldn't like, oh no, I don't need to work on that. I don't need to question that. I don't need to learn from that because it's good.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's like those parts of me people already like. I'm already certain about that. That is going to keep working for me. And I think that's a great place. Like, let's just say you've worked on some really painful things and like all of a sudden you have a day where you're bored. And you're like, oh, I'm bored and I'm protecting my peace and I'm good. And I keep going with that and I'm going to keep protecting my peace. And then we can become complacent. And we don't pay attention to where am I not kind of, it's this push-pull of like, let me get to a place where I am peaceful and I'm healing from these things. This is just what it's like to be a human. Let me heal from these things and create some peace. And then I'm like, okay, I still have some stuff to do because I don't want to be complacent either and just be bored and stuck. And often I think that there's even a stage in one of the chapters in my book called the 9 Stages of Personal Branding.
Okay.
And one of the stages is like, all right, you've like figured out what gets likes, comments, engagement. You do it regularly. It keeps happening.
That's safe.
It's safe.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're like, I'm good. And then you keep doing that forever and ever and ever. And you're like, I know that this works for me. But then either you change and you're not super into it anymore. And you're going to keep doing it because it works. I can't do that shit. That's why at the time where so many people in the fitness YouTube space have like continued going. And I'm not saying they're being inauthentic because they probably are if they kept going. For me, it was not the right move. So I was like, I'm going to end this whole 225,000 subscriber YouTube channel that I built for so long and so many people were super into and I got a lot out of it, but it just wasn't right for me anymore. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit.
Look, guys, it's not you, it's me.
I gotta change this stuff. And that's the hard thing about transformation and change is it has consequences for your life, which not everybody is either resourceful enough to do, or they don't have the support systems to make those kind of adjustments, or it's just hard. Yeah. It's just a challenge.
I love that word consequences. That's been my I'm not super deep into it, but like, you know, I do read and watch and listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson's work. I've seen him live a couple of times. And like that word amongst everything else for me has stood out the most. It's a word you typically only think about as like, if I do something wrong, there's a consequence. But I'm just going to very briefly summarize just like everything we do, everything we say, think, act upon, anything in our life, in here or out in the real world, has consequences. And when we really take that into consideration, like what you were just talking about of like, I've been on a great path. I've been safe. I'm feeling some kind of way. Like there's a consequence associated to anywhere we want to take any of those things. And I think that's a powerful kind of like, think of the end first, you know, like what is the consequence of me doing this, of me not doing this, of me staying, of me going, whatever. Take good, bad, right, wrong out of it. It's just what are the consequences? Yeah.
What are the like hypothetical, I love doing just hypothetical scenarios of like, all right, if we did this pathway, what would the consequences be? What would it actually have to look like? What would you have to do? What adjustments would you have to make? What kind of conversations would you have to have?
Old choose your own adventure books.
Yes.
Like, skip to page 45 if you want the wizard to like kill the troll or whatever. You know?
Exactly. And I think, you know, a lot of people feel like there's a huge distance between them and the thing that they want. And the thing that's helped me the most is just breaking it down into like, all right, what do I have to do today? If I'm going to make that choice, what would the today action have to be? And what would the emotional consequence of that have to be? And do I have support or resources or someone I can talk to about this? And do I feel like I can choose to be more authentic and I have people in my life that are going to say, hell yeah, I love that. And there's probably going to be some people that are going to be like, I fucking hate that. Yeah. Fuck you.
Especially if you're public, you're probably going to have quite a few of those.
So many. Yeah. 100%.
Reminds me of, it was just in Austin a couple weeks ago and I sat down with Emily.
Great.
M. Dunk. And the whole conversation was really about your higher self. Like, what would your higher self do? And that kind of resonates here of, you know, we don't have to really get so bogged down in the details after we've realized, all right, I want to maintain some things. I want to improve upon some things.
Right.
What is that end result? You know, that's what you were saying. There's so much time, so much distance, so many other versions of ourselves that we have to become in order to be that version. But like, what would they do here now? Yeah. What would they do today? Love that. That higher self is incredible. Speaking of timelines and space-time and all that nonsense, I'm curious, have you ever done this? Have you ever looked back on a piece of content, on a product, on a service, on personal, professional Amanda, and like been able to pull it back into the here and the now? Because you evolve, we evolve, you know, we go through these changes and we implement them in our lives and our businesses. But can we still look back and learn from those pivots? Yeah. It's so funny. I was finishing the second draft of my book the other day, and John was helping me, and he was playing the podcast I did with Gary Vee 4 years ago. Yeah, so it was like 19, 18? 17, even 5 years ago. Damn. And it was before I had a lot of my own personal development stuff happen, and I was like little baby Amanda, and Gary at the time was doing just interviews with really any influencer, and I was able to get on the show and have like a 30-minute sit down with him. So you went to New York for this? I remember. It was cool. I saw that video. I was a subscriber. Saw the video. At the time, I was funny. I looked back. I was like, oh, I was so unprepared and still just young and figuring myself out, and I would have done it so differently today. But it was funny listening, and I was like, I say the same shit. I've been saying the same thing. Interesting. And I was like, I definitely have a more refined tone now, and I have more information, experience, and I know what I mean a little bit more by it. Like but the thing was there. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's cool. It was really awesome to see that, like, the thread of what I think that we all have a thread. Yeah. And I think that we got a through line. We got a through line. Like, if you look back, I think that everyone has their own through line of like, if you could pick one word, what's your through line? Mine's authenticity for sure. And it's always been about like, how do you be yourself in this situation? And I've been saying that for years. And I think it's really interesting. And I think that whether it's your business or your podcast or your brand, you say a bunch of stuff. And eventually things change, right? Like, I've done fitness and business and personal development and spiritual stuff. And I've done so many kind of different topics, but they all have the same through line. And it's all about how do you navigate yourself through the process of it. And everyone's different. And I love that conversation because it really helps people get to the heart of who they are, of what they're, especially as a content creator, when you're like, what's my perspective? I think a lot of people can get lost in, all right, I'm a fitness coach. Everyone talks about the same thing. It's like, yeah, there's nothing new under the sun necessarily in terms of topics, but your specific perspective is you. And if you can connect to that even deeper, like if you can go deeper with yourself and you can connect to like, why am I talking about this? I think it's like so interesting to sit and think about like, why am I even like
in this podcast room with you right now, like what did you have to do to care about this so much? And what did I have to do to care about this so much to get here and have this conversation?
That is a beautiful perspective. I think a lot of us, again, I say a lot of us, I don't know what you're doing out there, but I'll speak for me, and I think a lot of people can relate. When we're starting out, and even when we're pivoting, when we're growing, when we're succeeding, there's a lot of leading with the head. There's a lot of just, this makes sense. A lot of things we've been talking about here. For me, the last couple of years, I've been finally leaning in, going into here, the heart.
Yeah.
And I have been just letting the heart lead for a couple of years now. And it's the most radically different thing in the world, but at the same time, the most familiar thing in the world.
Right.
And it's like the heart is finally going, hey, we've been doing this all along. We've been here all along, but we've just been kind of letting you think you're in charge. And now here we are. Follow me, come with me. And my head is just like in alignment finally. Yeah. It just 100%. Feels, I guess the best way I can say it is just finally flow. Yeah. Like in everything, in my personal life and damn sure in my professional life. How do we go from the head to the heart? And what does that look like? Is there a different process? And how can we truly pivot and lead and grow as a human, as a business owner, as a leader from the heart? Yeah, I think that is such a great question. I totally agree. Something I did real quick before I start sharing with my book recently. I keep talking about it, but it's been such a cool That's what we're here to talk about,
journey and process. I was going through the chapters and I was going through, we were doing editing and I was with my assistant writer and we were like, all right, what's one sentence that describes each chapter? And we wrote like, all right, what's the one sentence if we were to describe like this chapter is about this? And then we said, what's one word that describes each chapter? Ooh. And I was like, I looked at it and I was like, my intuition has been doing this the whole time. I was like, I am now just getting even deeper clarity about what this whole thing has been all about. But now I can see it. I'm like, my process has been working itself without my brain even really knowing what's going on.
I believe it. Yeah.
And I think that that's happening for all of us, but we don't recognize it because most of our society, and this is the conditioning conversation again, is from the head. I think most people live from the neck up and are disconnected from our bodies and our emotions. And again, we've been told that our emotions are bad and wrong and that we're not going to be as in control if we even like go down here, right?
It's not real. It's not logical.
Not real, not logical. And it's completely wrong. That is completely fucking wrong. And you want to know why?
Tell us.
Because when you have a full disconnect or a mostly disconnect from 3/4 of your body, you're actually in way less control than you think. Because you are completely out of control of your entire emotional system. And you don't know what the fuck's going on. And you not only do you not know what's going on, but you can't control it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're trying to control the uncontrollable. And it is a completely different system. I have a tattoo that says nonsensical.
Oh, yeah. Backward S.
Backward S because
nonsensical.
Nonsensical. The logical way to make that logical. When we think that we can try to control everything, what we forget is that there's so much that is out of our control. Our emotional experience, we can't control how we feel. We can manage it and we can regulate it. There are systems and tools that you can learn about how to regulate your experience. But the main shift you have to start making is there is a world that I can control. My actions, my behaviors, I can systematize things, I can manage things, I can learn as much as humanly possible, I can gain a lot of knowledge, and I can have a lot more control of my life and myself by doing a lot of those things. And that is totally true. But also, I have to just accept and learn how to accept that there's a whole world out there that is completely out of my control. It's your intuition. It's all the feminine, right? It's like the chaos. It is everything outside of you. It is so much of what's inside of you as well that our bodies are doing so much work that we have no idea what's going on.
Truly.
We don't know what our body is doing and we can't even imagine what's happening in there, right? Doctors don't even know fully. So how do we think that we can control every single step of the way with our business or our brand
It's the most asinine thought we could ever have.
I think it's hilarious when people are like, haha, aliens don't exist. I'm like, it's ridiculous. Like, really? I think that's the first step, is recognizing like, I don't know shit. I am not in control here, but I'm going to learn my own human system so I can have more leverage over my experience. And it's not for the sake of trying to control my emotions, but how do I work with my emotions in a way that is actually going to be most supportive? And I think that's the system people don't know. Acceptance, love, compassion, softness, slowing down.
Say that again, please. I love those. I want those to like sink in.
Acceptance, compassion, love, softness, and slowing down. Totally different conversation we're having right now, even just the whole tone shift, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different system that our minds are like, it's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to love myself. How do I figure it out? How do I figure what's the tool? What's the thing? What's the thing that I'm going to do? It's like, can you love yourself right now? Or can you be more loving in this moment? What does that look like? Oh, okay, I have to take a breath. Yeah. I got to slow down. Like, I got to realize that I don't have to think about it. Your body already knows how to do it. Right?
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
It's more about recognizing that there's a whole lot of like muscles and a whole system that we don't really know how to do or have a connection to doing that we can learn. It's totally learnable, and your body already knows how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing like, all right, I'm not going to disconnect from my thinking mind. That's really supportive and helpful. The only way that humans can actually process their intuition out loud is doing it through their mind, right? Like you're only as good as interpreting your intuition and your emotions as your mind can understand logic, because there's so much going on in our bodies that are illogical.
Whoa. That was great. Wow.
Yeah. Had a couple of interactions with spiritual people that think that they have a stronger intuition than their mind, but they don't know how to do logic. And I'm like, that's actually not going to work for me.
You got to know bypass.
How to do, like if you don't recognize the process of logic of like, all right, I have biases and I have feelings, and my feelings but we feel things, and then that goes up and then goes through our minds, and our minds make up stories about what we're feeling. And if you don't have a good handle on your mental,
not compute.
And if you don't know how to unpack your own biases and be like, all right, maybe my mind's making that one up, and maybe my ego is saying this, and maybe I want this to be true, but it's not actually true, or maybe I'm in a lot of pain and my mind is saying something that's not as accurate.
Maybe what a powerful word. If just before you got into any of the unpacking, what if you could remember to just say maybe in front of every thought, every identity, every label that you were trying to put on a thought, a feeling, an identity,
And then that goes back to the uncertainty. It's I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. Maybe I can't ever fully know, but I have to at least start with questioning myself. Right?
That's, again, like so much of what you're saying. This is why I love that this is a thing, because it's so it's like so selfish for me, because I get to talk to people like you who just like make me like so many light bulbs are just going off in my brain, mind blown, and like, yes, Chase, like the other people think this way, or like that explains certain things, but that's so true. So true. Life. I appreciate you for that. And like, this is why I love being able to bring it to the world in this fashion. But I do want to, I don't know, maybe like play devil's advocate a little bit, or let's just kind of maybe go the other side of the coin.
Totally.
What if, for the person, I want to level up my profession, you work for somebody else, you work for yourself, whatever. Can we just start there? Like, all right, no, personal self needs to chill the fuck out, because professional self really needs to level the fuck up.
Yes.
So 100%. How do we jump in there and like not forget about the personal self, or not go too far too long without bringing that version with us?
Yeah. It's always a dance, right? And I think that when you start to get into personal development, you're like, okay, I have to honor my emotions, but I also have to get my shit done. Like, I got to work and I got to make money and I got to take care of my family and myself. And sometimes I'm not going to feel good. So I think when you get into personal development and you're like, I have to honor all my feelings and I have to feel them and I have to do all that, like, and work isn't bad. And your inner discipline, your inner, people call it masculine, your inner sense of drive is still important for you because humans need stability.
Yeah.
And we need uncertainty and certainty. Both are incredibly important. I think Tony Robbins has like 6 human needs or whatever. 2 of them are certainty and uncertainty.
That's wild to think about. Like, how can those two
Live in the same
exist,
place,
but also be necessary, you know?
Yeah. And it's true. Like, I think that, let's just say you're processing all your emotions, but you kind of like let your business go. And now you're really uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're not feeling safe. You're not feeling like grounded, and you're not emotionally in a place of foundational stability to be able to make really effective decisions.
Because I'm sure it can maybe feel like, I just did all the work personally, but now my professional self is suffering, and now it's all going to like undo itself.
Exactly.
Because I'm back in like a heightened stress state, worry, fear, whatever.
Yeah. As the more that you can minimize, and this is the conversation about nervous system regulation, when your nervous system, which is the system inside of you that allows you to feel different emotions, and it activates your fight or flight response when you're in a stress state, so you can continue to do your life and not crumble. And it also kind of protects you, and it keeps you, and you can become more depressed when you're experiencing a protective state where it's more the freeze state or the fawn state. It helps protect you from different situations so you can like be a human. Like, sometimes you need to, like, maybe you're going through something and you have a long day of work and you're like, I got to dissociate right now so I can get through the day.
Flip the switch.
Flip the switch. And that's a system that we have that we can utilize. It's helpful to understand it. And it's also helpful to understand that you are in the driver's seat. And sometimes when you're when you're emotionally activated, it doesn't feel like you're in the driver's seat, right? Because it's a really big trigger or whatever. But being able to recognize that you can turn those parts of you on and off, and they're both incredibly important, and neither one of them are better than the other. The part of you that shows up and does its thing, and like that is a part of you that needs to maintain a sense of strength. I wouldn't be able to continue to have the business and brand that I had if I didn't have a sense of discipline that I think I learned from fitness and business.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And like all of those more like structured work jobs, I guess you could call them careers, spaces. I wouldn't have been able to maintain what I have now had I like gone through my whole healing journey without that. Because I was like, all right, well, I got to show up for my clients, and I'm not going to just end my whole life while I'm starting to process my emotions. How do I do it at the same time? And what I found was that, okay, sometimes I have to like take a week off, or take a day off, or just take a half day, or
take a moment,
take a moment, or take a bath, or take a breath, or go meditate. It's like, what do you do in those micro moments?
Yeah.
Like even that moment that we had where we talked about love and compassion and we just slow down. It's like, oh, that's really nice. That's actually really, really useful. Like compassion and nurturing yourself is doing that.
Allowing space to feel the words you're saying. Not just say them exactly.
Yeah. Even just slowing down your thought, your speech, slowing down how quickly you talk, or how much, like, I was talking with a friend earlier about podcasts, and you're like, you're on and we're performing, but like, we don't have to.
Yeah.
We can just be normal.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because we're here on a podcast doesn't mean we have to, hold it all together. Exactly. And I think that we can take a lot from the slowing down conversation of, it can be a micro moment, and then you can go back to your stuff. But what happens is we live in a world where the pendulum swings so far to that side where we're working. And this is the whole burnout conversation, and people wanting to like not work at all, and they're really tired and exhausted. When you swing so far in that direction, it doesn't actually work to take a bath, right? It doesn't actually solve the problem, because you have years or months or weeks of nervous system activation that is backed up like a sewer, and you got to clear it out. And you probably need a big life change. You probably need to like restructure your business. You probably need a week off from your phone. You probably need like a bigger break. And a lot of people can relate to that. And they're like, oh, and that's when I like went all the way into the more feminine. And for me, even with working out a couple of years ago, when I was first learning, maybe 4 or 5 years ago about all this, I was really burnt out, and my physical body would not train weights. I was in the gym and my body was like, we don't want to contract our muscles. Like, absolutely fucking not.
Interesting, really.
And I started dancing and going to yoga. And like my body would not do it. And I'm a very feminine person and I'm a big feeler. So being too structured for me, like even now I'm doing a lot more yoga and dancing because I'm working a lot and I'm working on my book. And like, there's just a lot of like activation, willpower, energy, discipline that I'm doing. So I don't have tons of leftover to like also work out really, really hard and train weights. So it's interesting to think about the energies of that.
Yeah. If we could go there a little bit more, please. I think that's, especially for the person that's, I feel like every entrepreneur, every driven person, maybe I'm alone. I just feel like we wake up every day and we're like, I'm going to take over the world. I feel that every day because I want to.
Your mind wants to and your body can't always do it.
Exactly.
Right.
And so like where and how do we recognize the energy that we're pouring into the thing and that is required of us for the task at hand, and then not demanding that same level of energy for the self later on. Basically, how can we be aware and manage our energy in these different states so that we don't get 6 months, a year down the road and like, I fucking hate everything. I'm burnt out. My body is so sore. I want to burn my business to the ground. How do we manage that energy dance?
Recently, a great sentence you can remember from my mentor and therapist, Jordan, my somatic therapist. He said, how can you make this sustainable? And we were talking about a physical state. And we were talking about how can you, let's just say we were working with like an 8 out of 10, good energy. And he was like, okay, how can you like make your body more sustainable so you can maintain this? And we adjusted my physical body and I was like, okay, I can hang out here for like, I can like sit in this cross-legged position with my back straight and I can hang out here and have it be sustainable. So in your life and in your moment to moment, there's like the bigger macro picture of like, how can my life be sustainable, right? Like how can, like for example, doing a bodybuilding competition, like that's obviously not sustainable, but you need to make the rest of your life, you need to adjust the rest of your life so you can be sustainable. So like maybe don't have a relationship or don't have friendships you have to manage or don't have a whole business and clients you have to manage because that's not going to be sustainable.
From someone who is a former competing athlete, powerlifting, physique, bikini,
powerlifting. Like
she's been on all the stages, so she knows what she's talking about.
Done the things, and in the moments that I was doing the least sustainable stuff, I had the least amount of life. Which makes sense energetically, right? Like
you just can't.
You're like, all right, well, I'm putting all of my energy into this thing and I'm going to choose to do it. It's my choice. I have to claim that choice. So what else do I have to do to make that sustainable? We need periods of unsustainability in particular areas of our life to make big progress, right? This is where you see some people, do like pushing themselves to the max and like having these big things, but you can imagine the rest of their life perhaps is not particularly sustainable. Or
one would assume,
One would assume, because we have a level of limited energy, right? Which is where I think people get into biohacking and they're like, how can I have more energy? And I think that's an important conversation of like, where can I get more life force energy? So I always think about like, where do I get most of my energy and how do I get more of it? And where do I lose most of my energy and how can I minimize that? And this is where the archetypes came in, my second company, which is a personality assessment for entrepreneurs. And for me, I started off with YouTubing and fitness coaching. And then I got into like building a big business. And that was not sustainable for me because the systems, financial, like business architect, marketing, strategy, energy, I can do it. But being the main leader of my company with being the only person doing that is not sustainable for me. It's really energetically draining. And the thing that gives me the most energy is creating podcasts, videos, content, books, writing, expressing myself is like, it's so easy. It's like breathing. It's just, it gives me energy.
Yeah.
So what are those things?
What can you do that actually refuels you?
Yeah. On like a work level.
Yeah.
And it's not even the difference between like, okay, I'm going to go take a bath or I'm going to go to the spa. Like, sure, those things that you can do outside of work are helpful, but what can you do from the center of yourself?
Exactly.
How can you make your whole work sustainable, which is where the archetypes got created. I was like, if I asked myself when I was really burnt out, I asked myself the question, if I were to start completely over and I had no obligation to anybody, what would I do? And I was like, I would have one big coaching program and I would have content. And that's where I would start. And that is super sustainable for me. I can do that shit all fucking day.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
And if I start adding other things like, okay, I'm going to do multiple launches a year and I'm going to do a whole book project. And like, I've had to pull back from my podcast. Even I had to stop it when I started my book. I'm like, that's not sustainable. Love it. But if I do both of these things at the same time, it's just
something
not
has to
work.
give.
Something's got to give.
And it doesn't mean it's over, or whatever the thing is. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Gotta come back.
You come back, breathe life into whatever it is that needed to chill.
Yeah. So I think it's important to have that conversation of where in my business or my brand or my life am I like pouring out energy that I don't need to be? Where am I wasting my life force energy, my chi? Where am I just like, where are there leakages of energy? Where am I just kind of wasting time, or I'm like not having an important conversation, or I'm
who is taking away from that energy? Maybe
who is taking away?
Hard area to look.
What patterns am I playing out? And even just like the way that we get so stuck in structures. We're like, well, I'm doing my podcast this way, and I've been doing it that way for, however many years, and it's the same and whatever.
There right now. I'm like going through this with a fine tooth comb. I'm like,
tell me how are you like making your podcast, let's just say, more sustainable or something that works better for you?
I think very on brand with our conversation so far is I have really, I'll say, a soft introduction of professional chase, particularly on the podcast, from like the hard changes that personal chase has been going through. And with everything that I've been going through differently, and finally leaning into, like I said, the heart, and I'm realizing that like the version of me that I felt necessary, felt compelled to share with the world, and the types of people, therefore, that I need to have on the show, that no longer serves that version of Chase.
Right.
And so in order for him to be sustainable with this and to keep wanting to come back to this, because I do want to keep coming back to this, that needs to change a little bit.
Cool.
And so, I mean, so much so like you of being fitness and nutrition, Amanda, fitness and nutrition Chase, fitness and nutrition Everforward Radio. That's really kind of like how its foundation. I'll say like sneaking in like a musician, actor, celebrity,
love that.
but still going back to, nutrition, health, wellness, entrepreneurship, just like all the things that are lighting me up the most, but also yielding a change in me. So I feel like I feel an obligation to this show and to the audience to not just use it for my personal gain in the sense of like, I love learning from these people, and, I have a platform so that if I'm interested in something, I can get somebody to come on and talk about it.
Right.
That part is cool, but I do feel the obligation to make sure that the message, a part of it at least, can be applicable.
Right.
There's more than just, okay, Chase, you just got this person because you're interested in this stuff.
Right.
Like, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of how I'm like bridging the gap a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's like a really great perspective for all content creators, because I think that there's one direction people can take it. Like my best friend Ashley, like she doesn't necessarily need to have as much of a personal connection to the topic. Yeah, Stall.
Yeah, we just did a little like pod swap, actually, a little bonus. It was
great.
She's great. Love her.
She doesn't like need to have a huge connection to the topic. Like she needs to be like semi interested in it, but the way that she shows up in her podcast is she gets something out of like the novelty of kind of this type of person, and it's always really applicable, and she always finds a way to make it applicable. But I think it sounds like you and I are similar, where like I have to be like really, really connected to it to even consider sitting down and having a conversation with someone, whether it's the emotional connection that I have to a person or like the way that they show up. I'm like, all right, we're going to definitely have a vibe here, and it's going to be good for both of us and for everybody else.
Exactly. And it translates. I think especially if you're in the content creation space, that absolutely translates. And fortunately, since moving to LA 4 years ago now, I've had the privilege, the opportunity, and the work to really get to know so many different people. Yeah. And so now I won't say it's like a prerequisite, but basically everybody that comes on now and has for the last like year or two, like, I have a relationship with leading up to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great.
And
you're great at building relationships. It's like a huge part of your
I can do that all day,
thing.
Every day. That's my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. You're so good at that. You've always been great at that, which like is why podcasts make so much sense for you. But it's cool to even just have the conversation of like, this is how I find the people on my podcast, and this is what I need for it to be sustainable for me, so I can keep doing it so it still serves people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So kind of future thinking, getting towards the last portion here. We are middle of 2022.
Yes.
I'm sure as you begin your journey of personal development and professional self, all the different forms of content you have created, the videos, the podcasts, the captions, the now book, what are you leaning into the most? Where are you seeing the most potential? Where do you already have traction in the personal and professional self? And would you recommend that for everybody else as well? Or what do you kind of see in the future as being like, yeah, this is a thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, a lot of people comment similar to you on my journey of watching. This is so cool to have watched you just be yourself. And I think, I think that that's such a big part of my experience. And it is for me as well in the last 2 years, specifically because I've had my book, which has just been a deep interpersonal experience and just like lots of processing. And I'm excited to get it out in the world. And same thing with Archetype, which has been such a beautiful journey of like creating something that actually helps people understand themselves on like a bigger scale. Doing two things that are long-term projects has been so internal. They're like long games, it's not this like quick, I'm going to launch this program or whatever and just get it out there. I'm going to make this one video. It's like things that will serve in the future. So it's just been cool as a content creator and someone that is usually so with it with people to be like, all right, I'm going to like make other things and I'm going to create something that's longer term. And now after the second half of 2022 and into 2023, it's going to be a lot more marketing again and just being more front facing again. So getting back on my podcast, which will be like, I'm getting there. I'm like slowly kind of dipping my toes back into that conversation. And then, just like collaborating with more people and being on more podcasts myself. Like this is one of the first podcast interviews I've done in a while. Maybe
we love
this
an exclusive.
Yes. this, and maybe I've done like 2 others this year so far. And that's kind of it. Cause I've just been like waiting for the book to come and waiting for everything. Yeah. So it's the conversation for me is like, all right, going from like being really deep into things that matter to me and really figuring out what does matter to me. Now I have so much shit to say. I know it's almost like the kind of reemergence of the bigger conversations that I want to have with people like this. I have so much clarity about what I'm going to say now. And it's not me figuring it out anymore. It's like, I know, and I'm excited and I'm ready to like have those messages reach more people. So it'll just be reaching more people over the next year, which is exciting and like a whole other kind of energy.
Yeah. And what are you most excited for others right now? Would you recommend that having that long-term pivot, a long-term thing to get you through the short term? Is that something that you're finding a lot of value in, would also recommend?
Yeah, I think it's, just contextualizing who my audience is. I think that that's an interesting thing to think about. People that for me have been online and maybe have been building their businesses for a couple of years at this point, or are just getting started, but that have a lot more role models and context and information for like, how did people fuck up and how are people like, what is happening now with people and their businesses? And it's 2022 and we started in like 2014, 15.
Yeah. I think I picked up a vlog camera in 2013. And by vlog camera, I mean this.
Yes.
I started with my iPhone.
Exactly. Yeah. And, now we have vlogs on TikTok and stuff and whatever. So I think the thing that's interesting on a branding level is just recognizing how many changes you might be making on your platform over time and how many options you have. So really, I think the thing that so many people are thinking of now is like, the conversation we're having is like, what can I do that is going to get me to where I want to go? But how can I also make it sustainable in the long term for me? Because it's not going to be this like quick, exciting thing where I'm just super excited all the time. It's going to turn into something that like I have to show up to every single day consistently. And I'm going to have life stuff happen and I'm going to get tired and I'm going to get confused and I'm going to have to figure out how do I pull back and speed up. And I think the conversation we're having is so important for everybody to consider for themselves. And it's like, how do I pick the shit that works best for me?
Yeah.
How do I connect to myself so deeply that I am making the right choices for me that are going to get me to where I want to go, but are also maybe not going to make the most sense to everybody else, but are really important for me to do.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
That's a whole other part you need to mull over and get used to. Or maybe you don't have to get used to it, but just accept that it is a part of the process.
Yeah, like it may be less sexy to do the thing that you need to do. Like it might be I have to make systems for myself, or I have to take a break, or like I have to go process my trauma, or I have to shut down this part of my business, or I have to start something new or whatever. And the new, the exciting, the like, I feel good, I'm really on, I'm successful right now. Like those seasons are so beautiful and so helpful, but that might not be the way that it is all the time. And I think that
so true.
That is the important thing people need to think about is like, all right, if that's not happening and I'm not always on and always good and always growing, what do I connect to? What keeps me here? What am I doing this for? And I think that's the conversation people need to be having.
Oof. Well, I'm going to do a mic drop moment right there. It's been such a pleasure to have you back on the show. It's so good seeing you. Love you so much. You're a homie. You just do. I've loved everything that you've done. And you're one of my favorite people to always like in real life, but online, just like watch and be like, yes, yes, go.
Go, Amanda, go. Go, Chase, go.
Exactly. So, and it's good to like, and I appreciate your friendship and appreciate your work and appreciate the things that you put out into the world because it's like you're doing you, but also you're helping so many people along the way, myself included.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I have one final question for you.
Yes.
And I don't know if I had this the last time you were on. It's been a few years. But bring it back home to Everforward. You know the story, the theme here.
Yes.
I always ask my guests, what does that mean to you when you hear those two words? Everforward. How do you live a life Everforward, Amanda?
I think the thing that we were talking about with complacency and never allowing myself to just kind of get stuck and stay there. I think being ever forward for me is consistently being devoted to my path of what is most authentic to me and what feels most correct for me, and how can I connect to the intuitive part of me that already is doing that anyway, and how do I align with that, with my conscious mind and my conscious behaviors, so I can keep being that person other people need in the world as well, and keep sharing my gifts and my magic.
You guys need to check out her previous content. I'm going to link it all down in the show notes in the video. I believe we have 2 episodes from back in the day.
Back in the day.
I
don't even know what we talked about.
I'm sure it was great.
Great.
We were wee little babies.
Yes.
But where can everybody connect with you the most? Where are you hanging out online? Like, where can they go to learn about you and get connected with you right now?
Yes. You can go to my Instagram at Amanda Bucci, and you can also take the Entrepreneurial Archetype Quiz if you were interested in that. It is eauniverse.io/quiz. You can figure out all your type. And you will be seeing me on my podcast soon.
Yeah. Bucci Radio, right?
Bucci
Are we
Radio.
still Bucci Radio?
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't want to like spoiler alert or anything.
Yeah.
But, well, cool. Thank you so much. Let me wrap the interview there.
Thank you, my friend.
And